America's pastime, fading before our eyes? Today, we're diving into why baseball matters more than ever, why it's worth preserving, and what it tells us about who we are as a country. Plus, Trump and Musk go nuclear. Senator Chris Van Hollen keeps embarrassing himself over the deported alleged MS-13 gang member, and a letter to parents with trendy baby names that I, honestly, shouldn't have to write. All that today on the Restless Signal. Welcome to the Restless Signal, where we seek truth, wrestle with meaning, and strive to live well. I'm the voice of the signal, and together, we're tuning in. In this episode, I'm talking about something that's great and good about our culture. Something that's more than a pastime, more than a game. I'm talking about baseball. But like so many good things in our culture, baseball is at risk. And as we lose these pieces of our culture, we lose ourselves, becoming something less good, something unrecognizable. This episode is a celebration of a game I love, and a call to arms to protect it. When I think about baseball, I don't think just about the game itself. I think of summer evenings playing catch with my dad in the backyard, the smell of a worn glove, the satisfying crack of the bat. I was never a star player, just an average kid. Those evenings with my dad are some of my favorite memories growing up. It wasn't just about learning to throw or catch. It was about connection, about trust, about knowing my dad was there, strong, loving, and always ready to toss the ball back, even when I wasn't that good. Now I'm a dad myself, and I've tried to pass that on, teaching my kids to play catch, to hit, to love the game. It hasn't always been easy. Honestly, it's been frustrating at times. There were days I wondered if they'd ever learn to catch a fly ball or throw without lobbing it into the neighbor's yard. But we kept at it year after year. And now they're actually pretty good baseball players for their ages. I'm proud of them, and I'm a little proud of myself too. Because baseball isn't just about stats and scores. It's about building something that lasts. Teaching your kids that some things are worth practicing, worth feeling at, worth sticking with until you get it right. Baseball matters. It's more than a game. It's a part of the American story. And in a world that's falling apart in a lot of ways, we need baseball. Maybe now more than ever. Because baseball isn't just about balls and strikes. It's about community, tradition, excellence, and identity. It's about who we are as Americans and who we want to be. But here's the hard truth. Baseball's in trouble. Fewer kids are playing. Fewer families are going to games. Screens and distractions are winning the battle for our time and our hearts. And if baseball fades, we lose more than a pastime. We lose a piece of ourselves. That's what I want to talk about today. Why baseball matters, why it's worth fighting for, and what we can do right now to keep it alive. Because when we fight for baseball, we're fighting for the best parts of who we are. So let's talk about and celebrate why baseball is great. Why it's more than a sport, more than a pastime. It's something that binds us together, something that reaches deep into who we are as a country, as communities, and even as families. First, let's just talk about the game itself. It's deceptively simple. 3 strikes, 3 outs, 9 innings. But beneath that simplicity lies a depth that keeps even the most seasoned fans engaged for a lifetime. Think about the pitcher-batter duel, one-on-one, a showdown every time the ball leaves the pitcher's hand. It's a battle of wits, reflexes, and courage. Will he throw a fastball or a curve? Will the batter guess right or get caught off guard? It's one of the purest forms of competition, one that mirrors life itself. Sometimes you swing and miss. Sometimes you hit it out of the park. But every time you step back into the box. And then there's the flow of the game itself. Baseball is unique among sports because it's not just one continuous motion like soccer or basketball. It has distinct phases like pitching, hitting, fielding, base running, that each requires a different skill set, a different focus. Watching a game means seeing all of those skills come together like a symphony. Take scoring, for instance. If you ever scored a game by hand, you know that baseball's rhythm is both simple and deeply satisfying. Every pitch is an opportunity. Every ball, every strike, every hit. Marking a line drive into the outfield or noting a strikeout looking brings you into the game in a way that's impossible with a TV screen alone. Scoring a game makes every at-bat an event, every pitch a possibility. What most about the game is how it celebrates excellence. From the perfect game to the walk-off home run, Baseball showcases individual achievement in the context of a team sport. You stand alone in the batter's box, but you stand there for your team. And speaking of excellence, baseball has given us heroes, names that are woven into the American story itself. Ty Cobb, Shoeless Joe Jackson, Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, Willie Mays, Hank Aaron, Nolan Ryan, Cal Ripken, Barry Bonds, Aaron Judge, each of them larger than life, each of them a story in their own right. These players inspire us. They remind us that greatness is possible, that hard work, perseverance, and a little bit of luck can make someone a legend. They give us moments we never forget, like Lou Gehrig's farewell speech, Hank Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's home run record, or Cal Ripken's Iron Man streak. Baseball's story is also America's story, especially when we remember that baseball helped break the color barrier. Jackie Robinson's first game with the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947 wasn't just a sports moment, it was a civil rights milestone that changed the country forever. That moment proved that baseball isn't just a game played on a field. It's a stage where America wrestles with itself and sometimes rises to the occasion. And let's not forget the history of the game itself. Baseball was played at a high professional level all the way back into the 1800s, older than most sports we watch today. Its roots stretched all the way back to the Civil War, when soldiers would pass the time between battles by playing baseball in their camps. That's part of what makes baseball feel like America's game. It's been with us through every chapter of our national story. The National League was founded in 1876, the American League came around in 1901, and the first World Series was played in 1903. That means we've had over 120 World Series, over 120 chances for communities to come together, for legends to be born, for history to be made. Compare that to 57 Super Bowls, or 76 NBA championships, or 106 Stanley Cups. Baseball's history runs deeper than any of them, and it's part of what makes the game feel like a thread running through the entire tapestry of our culture. And speaking of history, there's Cooperstown, the National Baseball Hall of Fame, established in 1936. It was America's first sports hall of fame, a place where legends are enshrined, stories are preserved, and the game's legacy is kept alive. Walking through Cooperstown is like walking through American history itself. One name, one uniform, one highlight at a time. During World War II, baseball stayed alive even as thousands of players left to fight overseas. President Franklin D. Roosevelt himself said that baseball should continue during the war because it gave Americans at home something to cheer for, something that reminded them what they were fighting for. That's baseball's power, to lift spirits, to bring people together, to remind us of our shared identity, even in the darkest of times. But baseball isn't just history, it's about community. There's something special about a ballpark. Whether it's the local Little League field or the hallowed grounds of Fenway Park and Wrigley Field, baseball stadiums are places where communities come together, where you can sit shoulder to shoulder with a total stranger, share a bag of peanuts, and high five after a home run. I love the different stadiums, each with their own quirks and charms, from the ivory-colored walls of Wrigley to the green monster at Fenway, from the quirky corners of the Oracle Park to the modern marvels of places like Camden Yards. Each one is a cathedral of the game, a place where memories are made and traditions are passed down. I'll never forget the day I took my kids to a big league game. I splurged and got us good seats right behind home plate. I remember walking out of the concourse and seeing the field open up before us. Green grass, the diamond, the energy of the crowd, the smell of hot dogs, the crack of the bat, the roar of the fans. It was electric. During the game, a foul ball bounced into the stands and landed a few rows away. I remember me and several others scrambling over empty seats, all of us reaching for it at once. Another guy's fingers were just a hair away, but I managed to snatch it up just before he could get there, feeling his hands straining for it. I lifted it high and yelled in triumph as the crowd cheered. When I showed the ball to my boys, their eyes lit up like fireworks. Now that baseball sits in a small case on our family room bookshelf, a trophy of our own, a reminder of the day Dad got one. It's not just a souvenir, it's a cherished memory, a memory we'll hold on to for forever. And then there's the culture of the stands, the seventh inning stretch, singing Take Me Out to the Ball Game, sharing a hot dog and a beer, or maybe some Cracker Jacks. Baseball is one of the last places where it's perfectly normal to slow down, to talk to the person next to you, to cheer together. And then there's baseball's place in pop culture. Some of the greatest sports movies ever made are baseball movies. Films that use the game as a backdrop to explore the human spirit, redemption, community, even faith. Take Field of Dreams. On the surface, it's a story about a man who builds a baseball field in his cornfield. But at its core, it's about redemption, reconciliation, and the longing to reconnect with what's been lost. It's about the bond between a father and son, a bond that resonates so deeply with so many of us. The moment when Ray asks, "Dad, want to have a catch?" It's a reminder that sometimes the simplest things, like playing catch, carry the deepest meaning. And then there's the natural. It's a story of perseverance, of talent that's nearly snuffed out, but never fully extinguished. It's about the quest for excellence and the cost of greatness. Roy Hobbs' journey from broken dream to a triumphant return captures the idea that even when life knocks us down, the spark of greatness can still burn within us. The Rookie's another gem, a film about hope and a second chance. Jim Morris, a high school teacher who thought his dream of playing in the big leagues had passed him by, finds out that sometimes dreams get a second wind. It's a reminder that it's never too late to pursue what matters, to pick up the ball again, and take another swing. And then there's Major League. On the surface, it's a comedy, a ragtag team of misfits who have no business winning. But beneath the laughs is a story of underdogs, people who come together, rise above low expectations, and inspire an entire city. It's about the power of community and what happens when people refuse to give up. And in many ways, the Indians' improbable rise in the movie mirrors the city of Cleveland itself, a proud city that's often overlooked and underestimated, but never stops fighting. It's an allegory for the spirit of a place and its people, proving that even when the odds are stacked against you, heart and determination can still make you a winner. These movies are more than just sports stories. They're parables about life, about fighting back, about finding grace in failure, about the joy of community and the redemption of broken dreams. They're reminders that baseball is a canvas on which we paint our struggles, our hopes, and our triumphs. Even beyond the silver screen, baseball has been a key part of our national story, woven into moments both grand and small, joyful and solemn, binding generations together. Such as the first pitch, a simple moment that carries a weight of tradition and meaning that transcends the game. It started in 1910 with President William Howard Taft, who threw out the first pitch on opening day. Since then, it's become a tradition, an acknowledgement that baseball isn't just entertainment, but a part of the national fabric. The first pitch has marked important moments in our history, moments of celebration, of remembrance, and of healing. One of the most powerful came after 9/11 when President Bush walked to the mound at Yankee Stadium and threw a perfect strike. That moment wasn't just about baseball. It was a defined act of unity in the face of darkness. It reminded us that we are still here, still strong, still united as a people. It showed the power of baseball to bring us together, to remind us that even when the world feels like it's falling apart, there are still things worth celebrating together. It's more than history. It's an experience that lives in the hearts of everyday Americans. It's about the seventh inning stretch, singing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game," the smell of hot dogs, of a beer, a bag of Cracker Jacks. It's the crack of the bat, the roar of the crowd, and the quiet moment before a pitch when anything is possible. These traditions and experiences are the threads that weave baseball into the fabric of America, connecting us to our past, to each other, and to the values that make this country strong. They remind us that baseball is more than a pastime. It's a part of who we are. And yet, even as baseball remains all of these things, a tradition, a community, a joy, it faces challenges that threaten to unravel its place in our national life. We talked about why baseball is great, how it's more than a sport, how it's a part of who we are, but now we have to face a hard truth. Baseball is declining, and that decline is happening on every level, from the little leagues to the World Series. Let's start with the kids. Once upon a time, nearly every boy and a lot of girls played baseball at some point. It was the game you could play anywhere, a stick, a ball, a glove if you were lucky. Now, while of course kids are still playing ball, it's nowhere like it used to be. While MLB might crow about surveys from the Sports and Fitness Industry Association showing an uptick in youth participation as part of its Play Ball initiative, anyone paying attention can tell that baseball is nowhere as popular among kids as in yesteryears. And while youth sports are still strong in some areas, the trend is clear. Baseball is struggling to compete for kids' attention. Why? Part of it is the pay-to-play culture that's infected so much youth sports. Travel teams, fancy uniforms, tournament fees. It's become a sport that can feel out of reach for working families. Baseball used to be the sport that belonged to everyone. Now, too often, it feels like it belongs to those who can afford the travel team fees. But it's not just the kids. Let's talk about the big leagues. Major League Baseball is still a massive industry, no doubt, but it's lost some of its grip on the American imagination. MLB attendance peaked at around 80 million fans back in 2007. By 2022, that number had fallen to 64.5 million. Even with a small rebound to 70 million in 2023, it's still far below what it used to be. And the World Series, once the undisputed crown jewel of American sports, has seen its TV ratings decline to the lowest in modern history. In 2023, the World Series averaged just over 9 million viewers, a 23% drop from a year before and the lowest on record. Let that sink in. The World Series, baseball's grand finale, can't even crack double digits anymore? In 2024, it rebounded a little to around 15 million, but that was because it was the New York Yankees versus the LA Dodgers, two of the most popular teams from America's largest cities. And even then, the ratings were still low by historical standards. In fact, 4 of the 5 worst years for World Series viewership have happened just in the last 5 years, and all 5 since 2012. Compare that to the sport's heyday, when the World Series was practically a national event. Back in 1978, it averaged more than 44 million viewers, nearly 4 times today's numbers, in a country that's only about half the size. The top 5 years for viewership were all before 1982, and since then, baseball has never come close to recapturing the kind of hold it had on the American public. It's been more than 40 years since the series was at its cultural peak. And it's not just the championship. Regular season games are seeing fewer viewers too. Fox's national broadcast averaged just 2.36 million viewers in 2021, dropping to 2.11 million in 2022. By 2024, it was down to just 1.84 million viewers per game. Yes, MLB tries to put a positive spin on it by focusing on other statistics, but these numbers tell a story that says baseball is losing its place in the daily lives of ordinary Americans. Now, some might say, well, kids are just playing other sports, but here's the thing. It's not like they're all running off to soccer or basketball. A big chunk of their time, especially teenagers, is getting swallowed up by screens, social media, video games, streaming shows. The American Academy of Pediatrics reports that teenagers now spend over 7 hours a day on screens outside of school. That's time they're not spending on the field, not building resilience, not learning to fail and get back up again. We've replaced the sound of a bat hitting a ball with the sound of a TikTok video playing on a loop. And the cost? It's not just fewer kids playing baseball, it's fewer communities coming together, fewer friendships made, fewer memories forged in the stands or on the field. And then there's a cost of attending games. Baseball used to be the most affordable ticket in sport, a place where you could take your whole family, grab some hot dogs, and make an afternoon of it without breaking the bank. But ticket prices have soared. Parking is expensive. The concessions, don't even get me started. A simple day at the ballpark has turned into a luxury outing that too many families just can't afford anymore. And that's a tragedy, because baseball was always supposed to be the game of the people, a game you could bring your family to, not just once a season, but regularly, as a way of life. And let's talk about time. Our lives are busier than ever. Work, school, commitments, errands. Everything crowds our schedules. Evenings and weekends used to be for the ballpark. Now they're filled with screens and endless to-do lists. The slow pace of baseball, once its charm, now feels like it's asking too much from a culture that wants everything now, now, now. And maybe, just maybe that slow pace is exactly what we need. A chance to pause, to savor, to connect, to talk to the person next to you. And then there's the city itself. Most ballparks are in downtown areas, surrounded by traffic, expensive parking, and yes, crime. Let's be honest, crime rates in many cities have risen in recent years. I'm not saying every downtown is a war zone, but too many people are now thinking twice about taking their kids to a game, especially after dark. And let's not forget the rowdy behavior. Fans who treat the ballpark like a personal bar, who curse, fight, or act like the rules of decency don't apply once they pass through the turnstiles. That kind of behavior, combined with rising crime, drives families away. All of this, the screens, the cost, the busyness, the city challenges, the rowdy fans, have combined to push baseball to the margins of our culture. And that's not just about the game itself, it's about what baseball represents, a slower, more deliberate way of life. A community gathered around a field, a sense of continuity and tradition that connects us to our parents, our grandparents, and the generations before them. When baseball declines, it's not just a sport that's fading, it's a piece of who we are. So what does this all mean? Why should we care that baseball is fading from our lives? Why does it matter if kids don't pick up a glove, stadiums are half empty, or if the screens have replaced the ballpark? It matters because baseball is more than a sport. It's a thread woven into the fabric of America, into who we are, who we were, and who we might be again. And when we start pulling enough on those threads, the whole thing can start to unravel. First, baseball is a living history of America, a game that's been with us through every chapter of our national story. It was played in Civil War camps when soldiers faced solace between battles. In a country without centuries-old cathedrals or ancient ruins, baseball ballparks, where grandfathers took their sons and now fathers take their own kids, stands as a living monument that binds the generations together. Second, baseball is uniquely American, a game born here, on sandlots and city streets, not imported from old world aristocracies. Its pace is unhurried, leaving space for conversation, laughter, and community. The pitcher-batter duel is a timeless drama of skill and nerve, a contest that echoes the American spirit of resilience and fair play. Baseball's traditions, the seventh inning stretch, take me out to the ball game, the simple pleasure of a hot dog and a cold beer, capture the best of what it means to be an American. Even scoring a game, simple enough for a child to learn, but deep enough to make you feel like a participant, draws us into the rhythm of the game in a way that almost no other sport does. All of this leads to the bigger point. Baseball is one of the planks in America's ship. Lose enough of those planks, our traditions, our heroes, our shared joys, and we're left with something that might look like a country, but no longer feels like the America we know. At some point, a nation that loses its culture loses itself. And let's be honest, baseball isn't the only thing we're losing. We're watching a lot of what makes America, America, slip away. The values that once defined us, faith, hard work, fair play, love of neighbor, and that plucky can-do spirit, are giving way to something else. Sometimes it's a culture that's all about consumerism and instant gratification, a hollowed-out version of America that's all noise but no meaning. Sometimes it's about communities that stay in their own bubbles, never really joining the American story, or even trying to change it into something else entirely. We'll talk more about that in future episodes. But here's the point. If we let baseball fade, if we let it slip through our fingers like so many other things we've let go, then we're not just losing a pastime, we're losing a piece of what it means to be an American. We're losing a piece of what it means to be us. Baseball is more than balls and strikes. It's a place where excellence matters, where resilience matters, where community matters. It's a place where strangers become neighbors, where differences melt away under the crack of the bat and the roar of the crowd. It's a place where a kid can dream of being a hero, and sometimes actually become one. And it's a place that connects us to our past in a way that few things can in America, a young country without many centuries-old cathedrals or ancient ruins, but with ballparks that stood for generations. Baseball is a living thread that binds the generations together, reminding us of who we are and where we came from. That's why baseball matters, and that's why America needs baseball. So if baseball is part of who we are, and if it's fading, what do we do about it? How do we fight back against the decline? And more importantly, how do we keep baseball alive in our communities and in our hearts? First, show up for baseball. Go to games, big league games, minor league games, local little league games. It doesn't matter. When you show up, you're not just a spectator. You're part of the community that keeps baseball alive. Your presence sends a message that baseball is worth showing up for. Every time you cheer, every time you buy a hot dog or a scorecard, you're investing in something that matters. Second, support local leagues. Volunteer, coach, help maintain the fields. These small acts build a thriving local baseball scene. They make the game accessible for all kids, not just the privileged few who can afford travel teams and private lessons. Baseball was always meant to be for everyone. Let's make sure it stays that way. Third, teach the next generation. Play catch with your kids. Teach them how to keep score. Show them that baseball isn't just a game on TV, but something they can be a part of. Give them heroes who show resilience, grace, and the joy of the game. The next generation needs more than screens. They need the crack of the bat, the smell of a worn glove, and the chance to stand at the plate and take their swing. Fourth, protect community spaces. Baseball belongs in our communities, not just in high-dollar stadiums, but in local fields and parks. Push for well-maintained, safe ballparks that families want to spend time in. Work with local leaders to make these spaces feel safe, because when people show up, it sends a message that these places matter. Fifth, we need to protect Major League Baseball. Pro baseball isn't just about million-dollar contracts and luxury boxes. It's the top of the pyramid that inspires kids to pick up a glove. When the MLB experience is threatened by crime, by rowdy fans, by overpriced concessions, by parking nightmares, it hurts the entire game. If we want to protect baseball as a cultural pillar, we have to protect the MLB. That means holding teams and stadium operators accountable for creating a game day experience that's safe, affordable, and family friendly. It means pushing for a culture that respects the game, the players, and the fans. Because when the big leagues thrive, baseball thrives everywhere. And 6, we need to address the larger issues that impact baseball. Let's be honest, crime, rowdy behavior aren't just baseball problems, but they directly affect whether families want to go to games. We need to reclaim a culture that doesn't tolerate lawlessness and disrespect. Baseball, and every community gathering place, depends on a baseline of civility and respect for others. So use your voice. Support leaders who prioritize public safety and enforce laws that make families feel safe. Advocate for a community standard that draws the line against disrespectful and destructive behavior, and be willing, when appropriate, to speak up when people cross that line. Sometimes that means politely asking someone to tone it down. Sometimes it means walking away, depending on the situation. So use your judgment. But remember, we need to reclaim our public spaces, not to surrender them. The bottom line is this: you have agency. Small acts, one person at a time, one family at a time, ripple out and become a wave of change. This is a much bigger issue, one we'll tackle in another transmission. But today, let's remember that communities are built when good people stand together for what's right. Finally, live the lessons baseball teaches. Baseball reminds us that resilience matters. Get back in the box after you strike out. It teaches us that no one wins alone. Community matters. It shows us that excellence is what we're striving for. It reminds us to savor the moment, because some of life's greatest moments happen slowly, and then in a blink of an eye, they're gone, like connecting with a perfect pitch. If we do these things, if we show up, support local teams, teach the next generation, protect our community spaces, protect MLB, address the big issues, and live the lessons baseball teaches, then we're not just saving a game, we're saving a piece of who we are. Because baseball's more than a game, it's the soul of America. Today, we talked about why baseball matters, why it's more than a game. It's a proving ground where we learn to compete, to cooperate, to fail and get back up, to strive for excellence. It brings us together side by side in the stands, high-fiving strangers after a home run, sharing hot dogs and stories, and a sense of something bigger than ourselves. Baseball is America's game, not because we declared it, but because it grew up with us. It's the stadium at the heart of our cities, the field behind the school where kids learn to throw, the backyard where dads and sons play catch as the sun goes down. It's the game that's been with us through wars and depressions, through every chapter of our story as a people. For me, baseball was the first sport I ever played. I wasn't a star, just a kid with a glove, learning to love that game. Because baseball, and life, teaches that getting back up matters more than the moment you fell. Now I teach my sons to play. I see the same mix of joy and frustration on their faces that I once felt. And I realize that baseball is more than a game. It's a way of passing on values, resilience, excellence, community, and love. Baseball matters to America because it's one of the places where we come together, across generations, across backgrounds. It's part of our cultural fabric, woven from the threads of every family that played catch in the yard, every dad who taught his kids to swing, every mom who cheered from the stands. It's not just a sport. It's part of what makes America, America. If we want to live well, if we want to keep the heart of our country beating strong, we have to keep baseball alive. Because baseball is more than a game. It's a picture of the life we're all called to live. A life that's about showing up, taking your swing, failing sometimes, but always getting back in the box. A life that's about loving the people you play alongside. Your family, your friends, your community. A life that's about finding joy in the little moments. The smell of the grass, the sound of the crowd, the feel of the glove in your hand, and the ball in the air. So grab your glove. Find someone you love. Have a catch. Pass along the love of America's pastime. And more importantly, teach them what the game taught you. That life is about taking a swing, doing your best, never giving up, and loving the people you play alongside and the person you play for. Okay, that wraps up our main transmission. Let's move on to the bulletin. We had some interesting stories this week coming in over the wire. One of the biggest headlines this week is the meltdown between Donald Trump and Elon Musk. The drama started when Musk slammed Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill, a tax and spend package that we'll talk about in a little bit, calling it a disgusting abomination. But Musk didn't stop there. He went nuclear by accusing Trump of being in Jeffrey Epstein's files. Trump, predictably, hit back hard, threatening to pull federal contracts from SpaceX and Starlink if Musk dares to back Democrats in the 2026 election. What used to be a powerhouse alliance is now all-out war, and it's exposing deep fractures in the MAGA coalition. My take? I knew this was coming eventually. Elon Musk, sure, he's a genius, and someone I find very interesting and inspiring in many ways. I particularly like his vision for space travel, but he's also completely unpredictable, occasionally volatile, and driven by a big ego. The moment Musk didn't get his way, it was bound to come crashing down. And yet, I'm genuinely stunned by just how low he went here. He didn't just criticize Trump's policy, that's fine, I get that. But he accused Trump of being in Epstein's files, essentially calling him a violent pedophile. There's no bigger betrayal than that. It's the most vile, career-ending type of accusation you can level against a man. And Musk did it without a shred of evidence. That's beyond politics. That's personal destruction. And think about what Trump did for Musk. He had him at his house, gave him the red carpet into the Oval Office, let him speak at cabinet meetings, gave him direct access to power. Musk had a seat at the table the rest of us would kill to have. If I had that kind of access, I'd use it to influence policy, to shape decisions, even to disagree, but with respect, like an adult. Because having influence is so much more valuable than throwing rocks from outside. Instead, Musk decided to torch the relationship over a tax and spend fight and make the most disgusting, unfounded accusation possible. It's an insult not just to Trump, but to everyone who ever believed that Musk stood for free speech and accountability. This wasn't free speech, it was character assassination. And let's be clear, loyalty doesn't mean blind agreement. It means you don't betray a man who gave you trust and access at the highest levels of power. You can disagree with a bill, fine. Make your case, push for changes, even criticize. But accusing him of being a pedophile, that's unforgivable. Musk didn't just betray Trump. He betrayed every principle of decency that supposedly made him different than the rest of the swamp. And now he's just another self-interested billionaire screaming on Twitter. The worst part is that he had the chance to be a real force for good, and he blew it. I hope, for him and for the country, that he gets himself right on this. Next up, one of the late-breaking stories this week, Kilmar Abregu Garcia, who made headlines earlier this spring when he was deported to El Salvador, has now been returned to the United States to face federal charges. Garcia's case initially drew national attention when his deportation sparked strong criticism from Democrats and activists who argued it was a violation of due process. At the same time, some politicians, including Maryland Senator Van Hollen, publicly advocated on Garcia's behalf, even traveling to El Salvador to meet with him. Now, new developments have emerged. Garcia is facing serious charges for human trafficking, including allegations of smuggling women and children into the U.S. and possible links to gang activity. My take, this whole Garcia fiasco was a complete joke from the start. Let's be crystal clear here. Garcia had 2 deportation orders. He wasn't supposed to be here, period. And we're not talking about minor paperwork error here. There was credible evidence tying him to MS-13, one of the most violent and dangerous gangs out there. Yet Van Hollen, in some ridiculous display of compassion, actually flew down to El Salvador, on the taxpayer's dime no less, to meet with this human trafficker like he was some sort of international diplomat. I mean, give me a break. And at the time, it was known publicly he was a alleged MS-13 member. This wasn't something that came out later. It was talked about openly that he was suspected and there's allegations against him in court paperwork of being in MS-13. Van Hollen still went to meet with him. And now Garcia is facing charges that are beyond horrific. Smuggling women and children. That's not just a border violation. That's pure evil. And where's Van Hollen? Does he have the decency or the intelligence to apologize to the American people? Of course not. Instead, he doubles down, saying he was defending the Constitution. Give me a break. Van Hollen only cares about the Constitution when it makes for a nice political talking point. It's not a governing document to him. It's a tool to prop up his political image. And let's get real about what's actually going on here. Garcia isn't an American citizen. He's an illegal alien with 2 removal orders. At best, the court was going to order him to be deported to a different country. That's a far cry from some aggrieved American citizen being crushed under the government's jackboot. And let's talk about the people of Maryland. When's the last time Van Hollen drove over to your house to talk to you about your problems? Or took you out to lunch to hear your concerns? And unlike other states, Maryland is right next door to D.C. He doesn't even have the excuse of distance. When's the last time he personally took your call or answered your email? Let's be honest, he doesn't. In fact, the intern who reads your emails probably couldn't care less unless thousands of them come in on the same subject. But he sure found the time and the resources to fly across the hemisphere to meet with a guy who had no right to be here and who's now accused of trafficking women and children. That's who these politicians choose to stand with. And here's the real kicker. Where was Van Hollen's constitutional concern when real Americans needed him? Where was he when January 6 defendants, some of whom were never accused of violent crimes, were left rotting in jail for months and even years without a speedy trial? Democrats like Van Hollen couldn't be bothered because this wasn't about principle. It's about political posturing and power. They'll fly across the world for a non-citizen human trafficker, but can't walk across the street for you. Remember that next time you vote. Moving on to our next story, this week Trump's massive One Big Beautiful Bill is facing resistance in Congress. The package is enormous, nearly $4 trillion in permanent tax cuts, plus billions for border wall construction, ramped up deportation operations, and plenty of other provisions that touch everything from EV credits to defense spending. It passed the House, but it's hit snags in the Senate, with critics on both sides questioning the price tag and the scope. But for Trump, this is his legacy, the big push to secure the border, cement the tax cuts, and deliver on the promises that got him elected. As for my take, look, I'm not going to pretend I know every provision in this bill. It's a monster of a package, and let's be honest, Congress never makes anything simple for the American people to understand. But I know this, there are things in the bill, or some version of it, that absolutely need to become law. Continuing the Trump tax cuts is non-negotiable for me. I do not want a tax increase, period. The idea that 64% of Americans could be facing a tax hike if those cuts expire is outrageous. I'm not about to hand over any more of my money to a government that's proven it's incredibly good at wasting it. And border security? Trump campaigned on building that wall, on enforcing the law, and on making sure the border is secure. That was his signature issue, and he won. The American people gave him a mandate to do that. Congress better deliver. I absolutely support finishing the border wall and increasing funding for deportation operations. We've been talking about border security for decades, and it's time to stop playing games with us. Now, let's talk about the no tax on tips idea. I said before, I'm not a big fan. I don't think it makes sense or it's fair, but at least Trump is following through on his campaign promise. I'll give him that. And finally, let's talk about the Democrats' faux concern about the budget deficit. Give me a break. These people spend like there's no tomorrow on green energy boondoggles, woke nonsense, foreign aid packages to countries that hate us, and now all of a sudden they're budget hawks? Please. If they're serious about the deficit, then fine. Work with the GOP to cut even more discretionary spending. But don't come after my taxes. Don't even think about it. The American people are already stretched thin, and the government doesn't deserve another dime unless it learns how to live within its means. Finally, in our last story for this week, Simone Biles jumped into the transgender athlete debate by attacking Riley Gaines, who's been a leading voice in defending women's sports. Biles called Riley truly sick and a sore loser just for saying that men shouldn't compete in women's sports. But she didn't stop there. Biles also took a cheap shot at Riley's body, implying she looks like a man, a move that reeks of body shaming and undermines every fight women have had to be respected in sports. The internet lit up, with supporters of Gaines slamming Biles for crossing a line and showing just how shallow her supposed support for women's sports really is. My take, I'm 100% with Riley Gaines on this one. This is not complicated. Men do not belong in women's sports, period. End of story. If you were born with a penis, you play with the men. That's common sense. Don't bring me the intersex argument. That's a tiny fraction and not what's at stake here. We're talking about biological males, bigger and stronger than women, competing in women's sports that were created to give women a fair chance. And the hypocrisy from Simone Biles? Off the chart. She's rich and famous because there was a women's sports category that recognized women deserved a level playing field. Now she's pulling the ladder up behind her. Not because she actually believes this is fair, but because attacking Riley wins her applause from the woke crowd. That's cheap, and it's a betrayal to every female athlete who's worked to get where they are. But what's even more disturbing is the safety aspect. Biological men competing in women's sports, sharing locker rooms and bathrooms. This isn't just about fairness, it's about safety. It's about my daughters and every girl in America having the right to play sports without being physically overpowered by someone who has an inherent biological advantage. It's about being able to use a bathroom or get changed without having a biological boy or man in there. And it breaks my heart that I even have to talk about this. That my girls have to grow up to confront this issue. That the basic right to be able to play sports against other girls and get changed in peace is even up for debate. It's outrageous. Simone Biles should know better. Instead, she chose to body shame Riley, saying she looks like a man. That's not just crossing a line. It's a total betrayal of the values she's supposed to stand up for. Riley is standing for fairness, for safety, and for common sense, and I stand with her. If that makes me a sore loser too, then fine, call me that. I'll wear that with a badge of honor because this is about protecting our daughters. That's it for the bulletin. Let's move into our next letter I shouldn't have to write. This one is not totally serious, but it's one that's been kind of irking me lately, and I just felt the need to kind of let it all out. So, apologies in advance to anyone that this might strike a little too close to home. Dear parents who think naming your kid is an act of artistic rebellion, congratulations! You've officially named your child something that sounds like an off-brand craft beer or a contestant on a dating reality show. Braden, Ryder, Jackson, with 2 X's because obviously that's cooler. You've given them a name that practically comes with a leather jacket, aviator sunglasses, and a personal brand manager. Let's talk about what this is really saying. It's not about your child's identity. It's about you. It's about proving to the world that you're not like all those boring, tradition-bound parents who name their kids after actual humans, saints, or heaven forbid, biblical figures. No, you're too unique, too evolved, too enlightened to name your child something as ordinary as John, Mary, Matthew, or Elizabeth. That's for the rest of us simpletons clinging to thousands of years of shared heritage. And yet, the irony is that most of you are still Christians. You show up to church on Sunday, you talk about family values, you read the Bible, but when it comes to naming your kid, you throw that entire tradition under the bus like yesterday's TikTok trend. Luke? That's too old-fashioned. Let's go with Riker, with 2 Y's. That'll really stand out, just like every other Riker at the playground. And let's not forget the look at me energy, like you're staging a one-person Broadway show called My Child's Name is So Unique It Deserves Its Own Instagram Account. You're not naming a child, you're marketing a brand. And every time you shout, Riker, Braden, hustle out there, at the baseball game, it's a tiny reminder to the rest of us that you see your child as a chance to showcase your creativity and maybe a little bit of your superiority. But let's talk about what that means for your kid. With a name like Jackson, Braden, or Ryder, that poor soul is going to spend their entire life spelling it to baristas, teachers, and HR reps. And let's be honest, these names practically beg to be attached to a selfie stick. You think you're giving them a name to conquer the world, you might actually be giving them a name that leads them straight to a reality show audition. Meanwhile, names like Matthew, Elizabeth, Mary, and John have stood the test of time. They've weathered plagues, revolutions, and centuries of human drama. And guess what? They're still here. They carry a dignity that says, I'm part of something bigger than myself. A reminder that our lives are about more than just standing out for the sake of standing out. Anyway, I'm off to buy some earplugs so I can survive the next baseball game without developing tinnitus from the endless calls of, Ryder, Braden, hustle out there. Sincerely, an exhausted traditionalist reporting live from Little League. P.S. Apologies in advance if I accidentally named your next baby. Riker actually does sound pretty cool. As we close in on the end of another transmission, let's wrap up with our Reasons for Hope segment. Today's reason for hope is about doing the right thing, even when no one is watching. While out on a morning walk, Jen Ewing stumbled upon a lost paycheck lying on the sidewalk. Some people might have just kept walking, figuring it was someone else's problem, or worse yet, pocketing it like a lucky find. But Jen chose to do the right thing, the good thing. She picked it up, tracked down the rightful owner, and returned it. Her small act of honesty went viral, sparking a wave of positivity and admiration online. A simple reminder that even the smallest gestures can make a big impact. Jen didn't ask for recognition, and she didn't do it to get a pat on the back. She did it because it was the right thing to do, and that's what exactly makes this story powerful. In a world that can often feel jaded and self-serving, this story shines a little light. It reminds us that there are a lot of people out there who choose integrity over self-interest, who believe in helping others simply because it's the right thing to do. Even small acts of honesty and decency have the power to ripple outwards, inspiring others to act with kindness and reminding us that we're all capable of being better. Why do small acts of integrity matter so much? Because they're the glue that holds the world together. They happen quietly, often unnoticed, in millions of small moments every single day. Moments that rarely make the news, but keep our communities, our relationships, and our humanity intact. We sometimes forget that most people are actually pretty decent. Sure, we're all imperfect, but there's more light out there than we often give credit for. And it's not just that these moments have bigger impact than we realize, it's that they're everything. The fact is, most of us are actually doing the right thing most of the time, without credit, without applause. We just silently go about doing good, and we're the reason that this world works at all. And that's a reason for hope that deserves to be shouted from the rooftops. Okay, well, that's it for today's show. Thanks for tuning in. We'll try to be transmitting again soon. Until then, seek truth, wrestle with meaning, live well, and above all, keep the signal clear. You've been listening to the Restless Signal podcast, copyright 2025, all rights reserved. Check us out on the web at therestlesssignal.com.